I'm back.
Hashtag I day with her. Una day with her. If una day with her, that's why you're watching us today. I have two people who day with her with me live. One is dialing in from Dallas, Dr. Ifueko Thomas. Hi, nice to have you here. And the other is dialing, the other is dialing in right from his place of work, somewhere in the heart of Lagos at City FM. This is Kingsley Obum-Egbulem dialing in from Ikeja, Lagos. Great to see you. Great to see you. These are two people who work very actively with young people under 18. You know, from our conversations in the past 2 weeks, we're trying to raise awareness about gender-based violence against young women, girls and young women. And Hadiza came on the first week to tell us about the statistics that has grown even worse since the pandemic came on. And one of the things she postulated then was that because people were left together in closed environments and the usual cycle of violence changed, there was more reporting. The week after, we had Wanda. Again, I mean, Hadiza told us about, she represents Spotlight Initiative, whose idea it is to ensure that this awareness grows. Last week, we had Wanda and Itoro come on the show. Wanda amazed us by sharing very deep secrets, not necessarily secrets, very deep pain she felt from having been abused by a nanny at age 6, a female nanny. And then, of course, Itoro was able to explain to us that with the domestic violence bill, one of the things she charted, we are on course to trying to solve this problem, but we must carry everybody along. Statistics says, Kingsley, let me start off with you. You're a daddy and you've been talking to counselors forever. Kingsley is a teen counselor, a radio show host, an author, a parenting coach, who's also a father of young teenagers himself. I've known Kingsley for a long time. I think what I admire most about the work that you do has come out in the book that you wrote, which is If Fishes Could Climb Trees. I'd be something like that. Am I correct?
When fishes climb trees.
Yes, when fishes climb trees. What happens when fishes climb trees? Do they climb trees?
Well, sometimes they are forced to climb trees because you compare them with other animals who are very good at climbing. So when the fish is made to feel stupid for being in waters, the fish may want to aspire to do what it wasn't designed to do. And oftentimes, at such times, it starts to climb trees, and you know how well that could turn out, or rather how badly that could turn out. So when we start to do the things we're not designed to do, we will always be terrible at it. So that's the whole essence of it.
And you write this book in relation to the fact that parents sometimes move their children in directions that they really don't want to go, and then we pay the price for it. True or false?
Exactly. I mean, it still happens till tomorrow. And that's because we have a perception of how we want our children to go. We have a perception of what we want our children to do and how we want them to turn out, which is not so bad. But the only bad side to that is we really don't consult with the children to know exactly what they know and how they feel about these whole ideas. We don't give a thought as to how they are wired, how they are designed, their temperament. And you know, like we always say, if you have a microwave oven and you think because the oven produces heat, if you try to use the oven to iron your clothes, it's going to mess, it will definitely mess things up.
Thank you, Kingsley. You know, this is a nice point to move on to Dr. Thomas as I introduce her. Now, Dr. Thomas is an educationist. I started off as a linguist, and as a linguist, became a teacher, taught for over 25 years, taught in some of the best schools in Lagos, then found one school herself before she retired into her education consultancy. But what I find interesting is she is also very particular about early child education. Now, so for you, Mrs. Thomas, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Adeso. Thank you.
So when you hear Kingsley speak about this, what does it speak to you about your own passions?
Well, I'm glad that a man is writing about parenting. That is something that just gladdens my heart. There are very few of you out there, Kingsley, so well done. It just gives hope. It just gives me hope that we're going to get there. It's a very slow pace process, but we're getting there, where we become more aware of how we should raise children. You know, so from the perspective of early years, I'm an advocate of early intervention. I believe that's the foundation is the most critical part of the development of a child. So if we can get them young, if we do the right things from very early on, we will not have the situation where the fish has to begin to climb the tree. You know?
I find that interesting. So can we kind of like draw this, and you know, it's a nice segue, like they say, into the topic of conversations, that most of the violence against against people happens when they are under 18, right? When they are under 18, there's a lot of violence. So these are the areas that you're expert on. Now, so I would like to ask Mr. Kingsley, you have some daughters, do you?
Yeah, I have 3 daughters.
You have, oh, fantastic. So with these 3 daughters, how have you been able to raise them? What is the typical way we are raising our daughters that exposes them or not expose them?
I lost the last sentence there.
So I'm wondering how you think. How do you think? How do you think we are exposing our children to violence? How are we doing it? Are we doing it right or wrong? Especially our girls.
Well, there's violence everywhere. Because even the way we react, the way we respond when we are provoked, sometimes it could make the children uncomfortable. You know, the other day, my wife was livid. She came home and the house was, you know, the house was not the way she left it. Now she traveled, and you know, when the mother is not around, you could feel it. The kitchen was turned upside down. And she came back, the first thing she did was she went to the kitchen and said, "Oh my God, look at, I've just been away for 3 days. You people have turned this kitchen upside down." And you needed to see my daughter do it like, "Daddy, Daddy." And I said, "I warned you guys that your mom, when she comes, she's going to bring this place down." But of course, I'm not the shouting type. So they needed somebody that will come and say, "Ah, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy." I said, "No, you people will receive these hits today." But you see, to some extent, when you raise your voice and you have children who are not used to that, that's some kind of violence. It may not be the violence we're talking about, but you know, violence begins from home. So it moves into the point where you both fight. You fight, you use words that are unprintable. Then you have the media. They watch movies where people are shooting, people are fighting, there's blood, there's horror. That's violence. Then you have your neighbor, depending on the kind of neighborhood you live. You have your neighbor who perhaps is used to screaming and shouting and even beating his wife, or they're fighting and killing themselves. Then you have the streets. You have the bus stop where the area boys are taking off their clothes, they are fighting, they are breaking bottles, and all that stuff. These are all violence. And then the one that beats my heart the most, that is the abusive part of it, where children are now at the receiving end of this violence. So your children get to see kids being beaten, this day we're going I was taking them to school, and there's a primary school near my house. We usually drive through that place, and we saw several kids early in the morning being whipped as they were entering the school. And one of my daughters said, "Daddy, what's happening here?" I said, "Yes, that's what happens in schools like this. When you come late to school, you're whipped, you're flogged."
So what you're saying,
they could not understand it, and the reason is,
what you're saying, Kingsley, is that they are all forms of violence, and violence begins with our shouting and our weeping.
Oh,
Even
yes.
Some people think that when you treat a child like that, you are teaching the child the right way to be. You're saying this is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to move on to Dr. Thomas. Does this in any way somehow expose
you're modeling something? You're modeling.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Kingsley. I'm sorry. Our own data is going back and forth here. So I wanted Mrs. Thomas to comment on that, how this affects, for example, when you are raised around violence. Do you now learn to expect violence around you to be perpetuated? Dr. Thomas.
Absolutely. Like Kingsley said, children learn from what they see. Children are born tabula rasa, empty, mind open, moldable. And so they are nurtured by the environment that they grow up in. So when we talk nurture, people always think only of good things. Sometimes you can nurture a child to be bad, so the child is nurtured by the environment. What you see around you, what happens around you, those things become normal. And so when the child goes to school, that's where school comes in. So the child starts off from home. Home is the first school. So everything around her or him, daddy, mommy, the way they talk, the way they relate to one another, initially the child thinks it is normal. And so the child imbibes some of these traits. But when the child gets to school, then confusion begins to set in, because that child begins to see something different from what he sees at home or she sees at home. And so confusion begins to set in, and then that's when this confusion can lead to all kinds of things. Then you have truancy, you have, all kinds of behavioral anomalies that come in when a child is growing up. So that's actually the home front, and what happens on the home front begins the foundation of what the child will eventually become.
So tell me, Mr. Kingsley, how is it that it's the girls that suffer more violence than boys? That's what research tells us. Mm-hmm. The most suffer more violence, especially when it comes to sexual violence.
I mean, it goes without saying the girls are more vulnerable. And sometimes this thing is also not just about physical vulnerability. It's also about where you have more men than girls. So, for instance, if you have 3 girls and 1 boy, it is unlikely that the boy, if he's the last or the least, will abuse the girls. For instance, I know families where they have relatives living with them. They have relatives who have come to live with them. And the girls in the house were not just, didn't just outnumber the men, they were actually older. So you may not hear cases of abuse, whether physical or sexual. You have a 15-year-old big girl, you have a 19-year-old girl, you have a 20-year-old girl, and here you have a 10 and 8-year-old boy. It is not likely that the boy will abuse any girl in that house, because if it's about strength, they are bigger. If it's about numbers, they are more. So, but that is not always the case. In situations where you have more boys, 3 boys, 1 girl, and this girl is the youngest, she's physically vulnerable and she's outnumbered, it is likely something would go wrong if the adults in that house are not sensitive. Sensitive to the fact that, look, this girl, if these boys decide to embrace madness, they're going to feast on her. It even happens among siblings. I'm sure you've heard. I mean, we've seen. If you haven't, I have seen scores where siblings abuse one another. And most times, it is the bigger, the older, the stronger sibling abusing the weaker sibling. This time, either the bigger girl abusing the younger boy, or the older boy abusing the weaker and the smaller girl. So these things do happen. So it's about power. It's about vulnerability.
So that's interesting. That's a new dynamic that Kingsley has introduced. It's a function of power, vulnerability. So where does that place us as parents? But before we address where that places us as parents and what we should do, I wonder if in the course of your experience, Dr. Thomas, as a head of school in many of the best schools in Lagos, is it a function of these things are restricted to a particular segment of the society, or even the high class also experience this thing that Kingsley has just mentioned?
I just want to touch a little bit on, because Kingsley was talking about vulnerability and talking about age. I don't know if it has anything to do with age. I mean, you have just placed a younger boy in the house, and older girls. We have drivers, we have uncles, we have friends of daddy that come to the house. We even have daddy in the house that abuse their daughters. So really, because the question you asked, Adesua, at the beginning was the issue of why girls more susceptible to why are they more susceptible? Why do we find that they are more vulnerable? First of all, before you can, the boys are abused, mind you, little boys are abused. I will come to that because it was a shocking revelation for me. Boys can be abused, but girls are easier because of our makeup, our genital makeup. That's the only reason. And because because for you to abuse a boy, the boy has to be overpowered somehow by someone that is more powerful than a boy. But the girl also has to be overpowered. But the girl is more susceptible because it's like the violation for a girl is
because there's a penetration.
Yeah, there's a penetration.
But the guy, you have to get him.
The guy doesn't get disvirgined there is no breaking of hymen, there is no pain. I don't know, maybe I'm not a doctor, but I just assume. So I'm talking, strictly from the point of view of someone who just, assumes that the boys don't have that much pain when it comes to that kind of thing. And then someone said, the boys will probably enjoy it, but no, they won't. So for girls, I think it's a question of stereotype. You see, because we raise our girls to think that this is what they are and what they're doing is wrong. If you expose yourself in a particular way, men will want to rape you. Men will, there are all kinds of things we tell our girls, and even mothers. Some of us grew up not being close to our mothers. So you find that most of these girls, when they are having issues, when they are having problems, they cannot go to their mothers. So you find our girls are more vulnerable because they do not have that kind of support that they should get in terms of when they are growing up, when they are experiencing change in hormones and things, when they are going through the process of becoming women. So all of those things are confusing things that happen to girls. And so that's the reason why often you find that they fall very easily prey to sexual molestation.
Kingsley, what do you think about that? Do you agree with the fact that because girls are not close to the adults in their life, especially the women in their lives, they are more vulnerable, besides the fact that they are weaker?
They're not weaker.
There are a lot of
power.
Yeah, I guess.
Am I coming in?
Yes.
Yeah. The issue of vulnerability, we can stretch it to several forms. When a girl cannot open up to the adults, to the trusted adults in their lives, that is also a vulnerability. That makes them vulnerable. When a girl cannot open up, when there are no trusted adults in the life of a girl, that's another problem entirely. You get it?
A huge one.
When things can happen secretly and nobody will hear about it in a house, and you live in that house, the children in that house are endangered. I wrote the book Flashes, which you wrote the you're one of those who wrote the blog to that book Flashes, and in that book I interviewed about 20 adults who were sexually abused as kids, and I happens to be one of those adults whose story was featured in that piece, but it was a poetic representation of their stories, and the stories were the same. Secrecy.
That's right.
Secrecy for some, when you get to know that this is happening. You said, oh, sorry, we can't let anybody hear this. That's one. And secrecy also by default. How do I mean? Where you can't even open your mouth because nobody's going to believe you, or you'll be beaten for opening your mouth. So you just let it go. So that also extends. That's why I said the vulnerability question, or the narrative, the vulnerability narrative can be stretched to all points. Then you also have the point where the predator now is the one telling you, you must not open your mouth. Nobody must hear about this. Like the case of the family who the person that was abusing the girl was the man of God who was meant to be praying for the girl. The girl was supposed to be having a demonic spell, and each time they take her to the pastor who was praying for her, the guy defies her, the guy abuses her.
Okay.
So
okay.
I just wanted to, sorry.
Well, I will give you, no, fine, Kingsley. I'll just give you like a minute because I need to take a very short break. But what Kingsley is saying is very key. Secrecy is at the bottom of all of these things. Secrecy either on the part of the child who doesn't have a trusted adult,
That's
or
right.
secrecy on the part of the adult who's ashamed or doesn't want to even speak up and keeps quiet about it. So everything is under covers. So if you want to just speak to that for 30 seconds, Mrs. Thomas, I'll let you go, and then I'll take a very short break, and then we'll come back to talk about solutions. So, Dr. Thomas, you can go.
Secrecy. You see, sometimes parents are in denial. I just quickly tell you a story of a little girl who was abused for 2 years straight on at home by her cousin and the nanny. The nanny and the cousin were sleeping together. The cousin was 17. This girl was 7 or 8 at that time. But by the time we got to know she was 10, it had been going on for 2 years. She couldn't tell her mom, like you said, because she wasn't close to mom. And every question was, I mean, when the child just said, she kept quiet. But when we had the program with Praise for, and we
in your school?
Yes, where I was working some 6, 7, about 8 years ago, a school that I was heading. We had that program. We just decided to do an enlightenment for the children. And it was a shocking revelation to have that this girl had been abused by the nanny. The nanny would sleep with the cousin in front of the girl. The girl would be made to watch, and then the nanny will watch while the cousin was molesting the girl. And the mom didn't know for 2 years. And when she found out, when I called her and she found out, the response was slaps, back, on the child. She was raining curses on her daughter. I was shocked and very upset. Oh, I didn't take it lightly because I threatened to report to the Lagos State government. It was horrible, and so I could imagine why for 2 years that went on and mommy didn't know.
Okay, Mrs. Thomas, Mr. Kingsley Obum-Egbulem, we've been talking to two people who know what it is and what it is to raise children, teenagers, and early child education expert and the teenage expert. So I'll take a break very quickly because we have some pledges that we have written that we hope people will imbibe. And if my technical is ready, can we please take that break very quickly? Thank you.
I pledge to always talk to my parents and other trusted adults about anything that makes me feel sad, angry, afraid, or worried. I pledge to say no if someone asks to see or touch my private parts. I pledge to respect and care for other children as I like to be respected and cared for. I pledge to report, speak out, and get help from my parents or a trusted adult when anyone hurts me. So help me God.
Yes, love, not scar. Let's do the best that we can to protect our children. For us on today's Woman, we are focused with this series on the girl child and the female child. And the story just shared with us just now by Dr. Thomas, somebody just wrote, that story gave me the chills. It just means under your very nose, your children could be abused and you wouldn't know, which is where I go now. Where does that leave us as parents? How do we respond when this kind of thing happens? That mother beat her child. Wanda's mother found out 20-something years after, and she cried and she wept. Why didn't you tell me? So, Kingsley, in the course of your work, you also speak of having been abused as a child. How did you handle that? How do parents handle this when it happens? Are we saying abuse is a way of life in this world? I'm scared.
You know, my case is was a very peculiar case. I was abused by a priest. And I happened to have been an altar boy as a kid. And, you know, aspiring to become a priest. So I was very fond of, you know, the guys in white, the guys in castle. So I became vulnerable because of proximity to, should I say, the priest who we were, deferring to. So that was my case. And I was a very little boy, very little boy. I was less than 10. Now, you may not call that abuse, depending on who is involved. I mean, you come into the mission's house one afternoon, and the priest hugs you, draws you close, and then he has an erection, and he takes your hand, dips it into his boxers, and uses
that is
the
abuse.
hand to kill. I mean, you know. So for me, as a 9-year-old, then I couldn't put that together. I couldn't understand what was going on, and I'm like, excuse me. So he pulls me close. And I kept feeling this bulge that at that age, I have never in my life come across something like that. And all of a sudden, I wrestled myself and got off his grip and headed for home. I never told my mom till she passed on. I never told my mom. Now, because this was a child that they were grooming to become a priest, that would have been a no. And that became, for me, I started to resent the priesthood.
Oh dear.
When I eventually got admitted into the seminary, I couldn't wait to leave. And I did leave because that was the life I didn't want. I already saw that, hey, if this guy could do this to me, it means if I'm not careful, if I become a priest, I'm going to do this. So I resented, and I left the seminary. I never went back.
The rest so that's abuse. Because one of the points raised in that children's pledge, I will not let anybody touch me inappropriately, and I will tell my parents. Before Mrs. Thomas comes in, I want you to address that question of telling your parents. You never told your mother. So, but you know, you may be lucky you've turned out the way you did. Why didn't you tell your mother? So what does that tell us for if it's a girl who's been abused? What do you do?
I didn't tell my mother because, first of all, my mother will die. She will faint. There's a woman who was looking forward to becoming the mother of a priest. I mean, you know, in my place, if you are able to raise a priest, oh boy, that's the height of parenting.
Never,
you kept it up. So that would have been it. Even when I eventually left the seminary, my mom didn't recover from for a long time. Thank God I turned out well before she passed on, But my father, we had no relationship that would have allowed me to open up to him. So I just kept that. But you see, I became silently rebellious.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's one of the signs.
So, Mrs. Thomas,
yeah,
I would like Mrs. Thomas to come in here. Very clearly, this is a man, a boy couldn't even speak. But you see what happened? Silently rebellious.
Yeah.
Yet the circumstances were there. You are an older person, higher figure of authority that you respected, does something which is abominable to you, and then you clamor.
This is typical. Parents should watch out. When your child, who was, nice and friendly, suddenly becomes withdrawn, there are signs, or becomes rebellious. Rather than take the whip and begin to beat the devil out of him, you should pay attention.
Yeah.
Boys react that way or respond that way to abuse. I was telling you about the girl. There's a case of two boys, siblings. The nanny and the driver insisted the boys must sit and watch them make love because they were angry with the parents of the boys. So they would put the boy at and say, watch, you want to watch blue film, watch. And they would do that. Another family, the boys were abused by the megad, who the mom would leave them with when the boss takes them home, drops them. Parents have to be vigilant. Vigilant. Boys, girls can be abused.
So tell me, guys, you guys have to define vigilance for me. And I want Mrs. Thomas to go first. What is vigilance?
Vigilance is ask questions. Talk to your children. You're not there in school, yes, but when they come back to school, download. Before they go to school, talk to them. Don't be an absentee mom. And be observant. Know when your child suddenly withdraws, particularly the girls. And tell them over and over again. Now, that particular program, we had to have a special advocacy program for the parents. We need to continue to get parents together, talk to them about what to look out for, talk to them about how to relate with their children. And thank God for what this gentleman is doing. Have programs that parents will get involved in so they know. And the most dangerous part of it, just like his mom that could have died. That's how it is if it is the uncle that abuses the child. It's either daddy keeps quiet, let the other members of the family don't watch our dirty linens, don't talk about it, and the child keeps quiet. And then the child suffers. It may affect the child academically. It will affect the child later in life as a mother. Even marriage. Some of them don't even want to get married. They don't even want to go near men. This is a terrible... Drivers are abusing girls. When a driver carries the little girl, I was that observant. Parents, be vigilant. If your daughter or your little girl suddenly decides to be hugging a driver, don't allow that to happen. What kind of I love the driver is that? He sits on the driver's lap all the time, going to school, sits on the driver's lap, coming back home. You don't ask questions. Or he just particularly likes to sit on one uncle's lap all the time. You don't be vigilant.
So tell me,
if anybody tells you that you are being overly helicopter-ish.
Helicopter.
Watch out. Yes, watch out. For
helicopter parents. But I think it's important to let Kingsley come in here. Why? You have a father of 3 daughters. I'm imagining, how have you raised them that we can learn from? Have you raised them to protect them? And protect yourself from this too?
I think a starting point is build confidence. Build confidence. And let them know, guys, you can talk to me anytime, any day, on any matter. In other words, whatever it is on the surface of this earth, please, you can discuss with me. I'm yours. I'm here for you. Because that's important. Your children need to know that they have a buddy. They have, like we say, paddy. Anything you want to discuss with me, I am ready to give you my ear, my time. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. I can shut the day down just to listen to you. And
So
you demonstrate it. You don't.
So you don't get shocked by the things they tell you. For example, you're ready to hear the words.
Yeah, that's I need to know that you are ready to listen. It's when you hear that you'll be shocked. At least listen first before you're shocked.
Exactly.
What if I don't tell you? You can't be shocked. So you need to hear first. So it is your job to create that environment, that relationship that would make your daughter believe that, daddy, I can tell daddy this. My daughters, when they are coming to your house, they are reporters, they are investigative journalists. Anything you do, I will hear. That one, I can tell you. Once my children are in your house, even if you fart in your house, I will hear.
So being vigilant also means teaching your children to be vigilant.
That's right.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I was coming to that. I have, because of the work I do, it was easy for my children to follow me. They've been to press conferences where we're campaigning. They've been to walks. They've been to rallies with me. They've carried placards. All the books I've read about child sexual abuse, they've all read them. In fact, my first daughter even wants to write her own book about child sexual abuse. So they understand these issues. So that's important. Another thing you also need to do, which we really don't, are not also sensitive about, is don't also create. I'm going to explain this. Don't by default create an environment that can override what you're teaching. I'll give you an instance. You have a mom and a dad whose bedroom is close to the children's bedroom, and you're having sex, and the children are hearing you. You are just messing up the things you're talking with your mouth, because the children are hearing, and you're forming impressions, and they're forming impressions. You're with your wife in the bedroom. The bedroom door is not locked, and here you are. Your children just bump into you. I'm sorry. You are going to trust God to take over. To remove all the drugs you're forming your head. Now, you also have the idea where daddy is moving about in the house in boxers, for God's sake. Mommy is moving about in the house with her lingerie. You don't do that. Your lingerie should end in the bedroom. It should start and end in the bedroom. Your boxers should begin and end in the bedroom. If you're stepping out of the bedroom, living room, wear trousers, for God's sake. Wear lounge wears. If you mom, you can tie wrapper or wear your house coat or change.
Or something, yes.
You go to houses where the mother is on the ground floor in the living room and she's walking about in lingeries. I don't get it.
Okay, so sometimes we also
carrying.
Yes.
So sometimes we also exacerbate and sometimes we create the environment that brings such. Are you saying this environment brings sexual thoughts to the head?
Absolutely. No. Not at young age.
You're sending wrong pictures, and that's bad. I have seen boys who their journey into pornography and sexual depravity was when they bumped into their parents having sex, and their life never remained the same. And when a child cannot make anything out of a sexual image that their age cannot process, it's dangerous. You have. I also say, don't put your bedroom, if you can, don't situate your bedroom close to the children's bedroom, for God's sake, if you can. But if you cannot, it means you have a price to pay, and the price you have to pay is that whenever you're having fellowship, the children, you need to be sure the children are asleep. Otherwise, you're causing trouble.
Okay, I think it's a good point for me to take a short break. Whenever you're having fellowship with your wife or your husband, please make sure that the children are not part of that fellowship, except, of course, you want to do a threesome that includes them. So I'll take a break. I will be back with our conversations. And we're just saying here, parents have a responsibility also to protect their children from the visuals of themselves too. I'll take a break. We're back.
I pledge to learn about types, signs, and prevention of violence against children. I pledge to speak out and report all cases of violence against children to the appropriate authorities. I pledge to step in and help any child experiencing violence. I pledge to consciously create an environment free from violence for my child. I pledge to communicate effectively and spend quality time with my children and build a trustworthy relationship with them. So, help me God.
I pledge to create an environment that is violence-free for my kids. These pledges sound like a dream, do they? Is Kingsley still with us? We'll go with Dr. Thomas.
Okay.
Okay, Kingsley is there. Okay, because Dr. Thomas was the last person Kingsley was the last person we spoke to. So Dr. Thomas, when you see this pledge, it's for those of us who can watch television and be online. Does it cross your mind like it does mine sometimes? What about all of those who don't have access to these things?
Exactly. I was just going to say that this is beyond. It's a good start. We're making pledges, but we need to take this discussion. We need to take this to the general public. We need to get across this information. We need to enlighten parents. We need to raise awareness. We need to shout it at the top of our voices. We need to go into those corners where all they have is just a little radio. We need to change the mindset of a lot of parents who from culturally, there are some cultures that actually, I would say exacerbate abuse, because those cultures that allow young girls go in, and have no problem with young girls going into men and men forcing themselves on young girls. In those kind of societies, you would find that if girls are abused, they wouldn't even talk, because it's like normal to them. So these pledges are good, but in our schools, because where the education will start, where the enlightenment and awareness will start is from the school. And virtually, whether public schools or private schools, we must get this message out there and begin to drum it in, because you will be amazed at what you would find out. What would you do? Kingsley was talking about what would you do when you're all in one room and parlor, or you are all in what would you do? Because this you must have relations. It's just that some of them send their children out of the room. That's what we discovered, while we were doing the search before we did the program that we had in the school. But we had people who had nowhere else to take their children to, and so the children will be there imagining what is going on with the sheet of wrapper that you use to separate where the children lie down from where the parents lie down. It's a challenge, but it's something that can be done. It is a challenge, but it can be done. And like he said, the language that you use. I was going to point out, there was a little boy that came to school one day. One of these, we have big schools and we think these things don't happen. And the boy asked his friend, "Do you know G-spots?" The teacher almost fainted. The 5-year-old boy asking another 5-year-old, "Please, what is G-spot?" And the teacher was screaming. I ran to my office with the boy. I said, "What is it?" I said, "He doesn't even know what he's saying. He probably heard mommy or daddy talking about it." And so he came to school interested in finding out, hoping that his friend will be able to tell him what he's saying. Because by the time we talked to him, he just didn't understand what he was saying. From very early on, like he said, you create an image. If the way we handle things can also create the image in the minds of the children. Because
I think, because I understand that, this also brings to mind the question of when you get confronted with such things as a parent, what do you do? Kingsley, your son comes to you at age 3. "Oh, daddy, what is G-spot?"
Yeah, I think the first thing you need to know is that your child is listening to somewhere. Somebody is doing your parenting for you. Someone is helping you raise your child. Obviously, he had it somewhere. He read it somewhere. So, like Dr. Thomas said, you need to dig in now. You need to investigate. So, where did this come from? How did you get this? It could be you have a child who is reading wide and suddenly read something he wasn't meant to read, or a book that was meant for him, but somebody put something that there are some inappropriate, there are books that are not age appropriate. He must have read something or she must have read something. So you don't panic, you don't fret, take your time to first of all diffuse whatever tension. If you lie, the child will continue to ask that question, or the child will stop asking, and the
ask
child
someone
will
else. The child will go and ask someone else.
Yes.
Yes.
So,
Best as you can. Excuse me?
So, I mean, parents must be ready to answer the tough questions. That's what you guys are saying.
Yes.
Yes.
We are parents ourselves.
And answer clearly. Stop using. I have parents who just brush it aside or make believe out of it. It is true. It is real. Answer the children clearly. Let them know what it is.
For example, Thomas.
Okay.
The G-spot question.
No.
So your son comes to you at age 5 and say, "Mommy, what's the G-spot?"
Yes. You tell the child the G-spot is a part. Is a spot in mommy's body. Is a part in mommy's body. You can leave it there. If the child continues to probe, you know that, hey, there's something beyond this question. This question is not a, like Fela would say, this case is not a briefcase.
No, if you ask me that, if a child were to ask me that question, the first I would say, where did you get that from? What's G-spot? For a 5-year-old, I would distract the 5-year-old. That kind of question, distract the 5-year-old. Okay, write G for me and put a spot there. What's that? G-spot. Where did you hear the G-spot? Mommy, daddy, oh, I can't remember. You say, okay, it's a spot, not on your body. The truth of the matter is age. Where I disagree with you, Kingsley, is that there's age-appropriate information that you give, right? For that 5-year-old, you distract the 5-year-old because their attention span is like so. So he heard that, and he heard that mommy laughed, because I called the parents. He heard mommy laughing and daddy laughing, and they were talking about it. And so he wondered, this thing that is making them laugh so loud and so happy and so excited is stuck in his head. And so I distracted him. And so I'm sure in his mind, briefly, he would think, oh, G and the spot. Oh, okay. And he walked away. And that was it. And so, but the important thing was that the teacher could have taken that thing out of context. Sometimes the way adults handle information with children is what makes them want to find out more about it. So depending on the age, if a 10-year-old or an 11-year-old comes, it's a different ballgame. You sit down with the person, tell the person what it is, and tell that person, this is not appropriate for you to be thinking about now. Don't you think there are better things to talk about? And then begin to tell them what they should talk about. Not just
they would listen to you.
Yeah, they would listen. You'd listen to them, not shout and say, "Ah, yeah, you do hear that? The kind of reaction that we give, we parents, that we exhibit when children come. You just calm down, get an age-appropriate. I said, if the child is 5, 6, and below, distract the child with some other thing. If the child is like 10, 11, 10, going to please, tell them the truth, because they will find out. If you tell them stories that cover it, they will find out.
Okay,
another thing I just want to quickly point out, parents, when you are making reference to your children's privates, please call them by the name. A young boy has a penis. Don't say peep peep. And a young girl has a vagina. Don't say boom boom or bam bam. The truth of the matter is, if you say boom boom and you said nobody should touch your boom boom, If somebody comes and says, I want to touch your vagina, believe me, the child will let the person touch, because the child does not know what it is. Be very careful. Call it by its name. Don't be shy. I find many parents are shy to talk about this. I don't know whether this program will be enough for us to talk about this.
No, we're talking about it. Several people are going to talk about this. But clearly what I'm taking away from you too is that, parenting of those under 18 is very critical.
Yes.
One of the things is keep the door of conversation open. Don't be, be careful with what you let them see, but don't be scared and what you say around them. But before you go, I want you guys to give 3 things that we should do as parents when we are confronted with the fact that your child or your ward has been abused physically or sexually. 3 things. What's the first thing you should do? What's the second thing you should do? And what's the third thing you should do? Kingsley, you want to go first? Since you're going live in a few minutes at 8 too. We're going live at 9.
9, yeah. I honestly, it's not a good place to be. So prepare before it happens. Prepare before it happens. Prepare before it happens. Gain knowledge, gain capacity before it happens. Otherwise, when it happens, you will likely fret. So the first question, the answer number 1 is when it happens, don't fret. Ask questions, like Dr. Thomas said. Ask questions. Ask questions. Know that water has passed under the bridge, and so it's time to start to build all over again. Ask questions. Start to build trust now. Start to build trust. Don't blame the child. Don't blame the child. Believe the child, and then ask for professional help. The rest will follow. Trust the child, build confidence, ask questions, believe the child, then ask for professional help.
Yeah.
That is, if you have not built capacity before it happens. If you build capacity before it happens, one of the things you will likely know that it will not happen. It will likely not happen because, like Dr. Thomas said, you become a hawk.
So build capacity for yourself and your child.
And your child before it happens.
Yes.
Okay. Number 1 for me is, like you said, don't fret, but hug the child.
Oh.
If your child comes to you and says something happened, just hold the child in your arms. And if you want to cry, cry with the child. Don't yell. And then ask questions. Listen actively. Now, when you are asking questions, don't show shock. Don't show, how could it? Just listen actively to that child and then report to the police. Report it immediately. Those 3 things. Because as soon as you've gotten all the information, don't even investigate. Because when you say, let me find out, if it was true, you have told that child that I don't believe you. So please, because you have raised your children and you know your child trusts you and the child has come to you with that kind of story, don't make noise or anything. Just report to the authorities. Of course, they will investigate. Let them do the investigating, but you go straight and report. I know Lagos State, I had this information I said I was going to share. Lagos State has, there's this, they have what they call the Lagos State Domestic Sexual and Violent Response Team. It was set up.
Yeah.
So there is a number there, and I don't know if you have the number, this one. There is a number.
We will usually send information about where to find help.
Please. So
before the 2 of you go, what about if it's within the family? 2 brothers.
If it is within the same thing, if it is within the family, fathers. Mr. Kingsley, I doff my hat for you. Honestly, I wish all fathers would be like this. But the truth of the matter is that it's not the case. But we are hoping that things get better. Fathers must, if you are the wife, the mom, and your child comes to you, call your husband, sit him down, both of you, because the men can really react very badly. Calm him down, and then you guys together hold on to your child, and then report the matter. Don't handle it yourself because you won't handle it well. Report.
That's the same thing that Kingsley is saying. Find a professional, seek help. But I hear you. I believe what you're saying.
Exactly.
I wish I had that number. Do you have the number for the Lagos State? Do you have it on you? Yeah. You want to read it out? So
080 003 3333 0800-033-3333.
Okay, it's mostly threes.
Yes.
0, 3
Mostly
zeros,
zero.
and the rest are 3.
Yes, 080-0800.
Okay, we'll type it on screen. Just type it for us in the chat room.
3333. That's it.
Yes, type for us in the chat room. And Kingsley, as we leave, yes, that's it. So this is the response center in Lagos. The hope is that across Nigeria, this will happen. Many more people will be put in response centers. Yeah. But with us having this conversation today in this community and on YouTube, we are hoping that people will carry the message to their own spots, not just your home. Teach people, each one teach one. And first of all, imbibe it. And while it's not anybody's prayer that you find yourself in this situation, as Kingsley says, prepare yourself. Mm-hmm. You're not praying for it to happen. Build capacity for yourself and for your children. So a final word from Kingsley, very quickly. Final word. I said word, not bye-bye.
Help is always available. Help. Sometimes people get destroyed because they don't ask for help. So when it comes to sexual abuse, the easiest way to navigate is to ask for help. Ask somebody, where can I get help to address this problem? The moment you start talking to the right persons, you are guided properly, especially when you're lost. Ask for help. It will always be handy.
Mrs. Thomas?
Moms and dads, your children have only you. You are all they have. You are the one that they trust. So build that trust. Develop a trust. Let your children be confident in you, because the truth is, if they lose trust in their parents, they will be lost. Believe me.
Thank you very much, parents. You are both parents. Thank you very much, educators. You're both educators. And thank you to all those who have watched our live stream. This is going to be on our YouTube channel, so we can get to see it. We thank Spotlight Initiative, which is the EU and United Nations initiative within the UNICEF, for making these conversations happen. And as we speak, the conversations are also going on radio and in different languages. So as I say, thank you to both of you for being here, especially because I always call you at short notice. I would just want us to end with a pledge as we say bye-bye to our readers. So thank you very much, Dr. Thomas.
Thank you. I did with her.
That's true. Thank you, Kingsley. Are you with her?
I did.
Thank you.
I did with her.
I did with her.
I did now.
I did with her.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
I pledge to learn about types, signs, and prevention of violence against children. I pledge to speak out and report all cases of violence against children to the appropriate authorities. I pledge to step in and help any child experiencing violence. I pledge to consciously create an environment free from violence for my child. I pledge to communicate effectively and spend quality time with my children and build a trustworthy relationship with them. So, help me God.
Yes.